Hello and welcome to another video. Game of Wool is coming back for series 2. Yes, there will be a second series of Game of Wool, everyone's favourite knitting show. Are you looking forward to it? I don't know. I think probably opinions are mixed. YouTubers liked it because it really boosted our viewing figures, especially mine. I did really well in November and December and January out of Game of Wool. They were my most popular videos in the last year, I think. So for me, I'm quite happy for it to come back. I'm happy to talk about it. I do hope they've learned some lesson. They are saying they have. You can now apply for the next season. I don't know what the deadline is. So it may be too late by the time this video goes out. But they have put out a call for new contestants, and I did go and have a look at it. There's nothing in that mentions crochet at all, so it'd be interesting to see whether they will stick to knitting this time or they will mix in some crochet as well. I don't mind a little bit of crochet, but I do think it's unfair if you're applying for it as a knitter and you weren't aware that there was going to be crochet before you applied. So what I thought I'd do today is I would actually go through the questions they ask you. So the way it seems to work is that you fill in an initial questionnaire, and then based on that you're selected for, I think, a phone interview first, and then you may be asked for an audition. I think they said auditions are in London, Manchester and Scotland. I can't remember if it was Edinburgh or Glasgow, but somewhere in that area. So not terribly convenient if you live in the far southwest of England like me, but I'm not applying anyway, so it doesn't matter to me. But today I thought I'd go through the questions and give you my answers to those questions. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns that teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through our website yarnaddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. First, tell me, are you excited that Game of Wool is coming back? I am looking forward to it. I'm hoping they've learned and they'll be better. It'll be interesting to see if they change anything. So when I was in Norway last time, in February, end of February, first week of March, I came back from the gym one evening and my mum shouted to me as soon as I walked in the door, "There's knitting on the telly." And I was like, "Okay." And then she said, "It's from Scotland." I was like, "Oh, it's Game of Wool, isn't it?" So I walked in the lounge and it was Game of Wool, first episode, just starting. So I took a picture of me knitting with Game of Wool, like the screen in the background, and put it on my Instagram stories and tagged some of the contestants that I follow. And I also tagged Tom Daly, I think, and Di Gilpin. When you tag someone in your Instagram stories, it sends a message to them. So they get like a DM, a private message, direct message. So she just replied to that saying, "Oh, I hope you enjoy it." And I replied, "Thank you. I've actually seen it before. I saw it when it was on the TV in the UK. I'm just in Norway visiting my parents." And then she went, "Oh, you're the lady that talked about it on YouTube." So either she's watched it or somebody's told her, and I wasn't that complimentary. So if you're watching this, Di, I do apologize, but I was not a fan of the needles in the hair thing. If that's your thing and you always were knitting needles in your hair, fine, but I didn't see any other pictures on your Instagram with knitting needles in your hair, so I don't know. Was it a thing, or was it just because some of the producers or makeup and hair, whatever people told you it was a good idea? I don't know. But anyway, I wasn't a huge fan of that. A few other things I wasn't a huge fan of, but we're not going to get into the presenter or the judges. We're going to talk about the questions. So I'm going to go through some of the questions. I went through the application form. I didn't go through because I couldn't bother to answer all the questions. I started answering them to see how far I could get. And then I got to the point where I thought there's too many questions and too much writing, so I can't be bothered. But I went through and I just screenshot the questions. And then once you answer the questions, you had to submit that. And I don't know what comes after that because I didn't fill that in. I think to start with, there was like profile thing where you had to fill in personal details, contact details, address, all that kind of stuff, whether you'd be available. It sounds like it's shooting in May, June and July. I think it said you had to be available for 8 weeks. I can't do that anyway because I'm away for 2 weeks in May, beginning of May. Then I have a workshop. Then I go to Norway at the end of May for 2 weeks, and then I got a workshop at the end of June and end of July, and I'm not willing to cancel any of those unless Game of Wool are paying their contestants, which I don't think they are. I'm not cancelling those for an unpaid thing. Plus, it did say that if you make the majority of your income from knitting, then you are not eligible to apply. And as I have been designing knitting patterns for magazines, I've written 2 books, been selling my patterns online and teaching workshops for 20 years now. I think we can definitely say that majority of my income, all my income, comes from knitting. I may not be earning a lot, but it's all from knitting, so I don't think I would qualify at all. Okay, so I've got the questions on my phone here, so if I look down, that's why. So you fill in your profile thing, and then you got the questions, and then it goes on for media stuff, and then it says finish. So I didn't go on through the media and the finish stuff. I just went through screenshot the questions just for fun. So it starts with how long you've been knitting for. I have no idea. I've been knitting for as long as I can remember. I don't remember learning to knit. I don't know how old I was when I learned to knit. My mum doesn't remember teaching me to knit. I think I knew how to knit before I started primary school. My first knitting memories are from when I was in secondary school, and we used to knit in a lunch break out school, and we used to also knit sometimes during class time at school. We were allowed, if the teacher was just talking, and we just had to sit and listen, we were allowed to knit. So that's what we used to do. So I don't know how long I've been knitting for. I remember. I'm 56, so probably I would say close to 50 years. My mum doesn't remember teaching me to knit because I asked her a few years ago. She said, "Oh, you've just always been knitting." So who knows? Who taught you how to knit? My mum doesn't remember teaching me how to knit. She said, "Oh, you just always known how to knit," which I'm sure that's not true. She must have taught me at some point, but I'm assuming because my mum was a keen knitter is a keen knitter, that she taught me how to knit. Although in Norway, when I was at school, you were still taught how to knit at school. My nephews were also taught how to knit at school. My youngest nephew, they asked for parent and grandparents or other volunteers to come in and help. So my mum went in to help his class learn to knit. Because let's face it, learning knitting is easier if you are one-to-one with somebody or 1-to-2. It's difficult to teach a whole group how to knit from scratch. What do you get out of knitting? Well, obviously it's my job. The reason I started knitting as a job, I've covered it in a previous video. I might link that at the end if I remember. But I enjoy knitting. I've always enjoyed knitting. It gives me something to do when I'm sitting watching telly or relaxing. I like what I create. I like wearing what I create, but it's the action of knitting that's more important to me. Obviously, things have changed over the years because I'm now doing this as a job. So everything I knit is not necessarily stuff that I want to wear or can wear, because when I design for magazines, they're not in my size. But yeah, I enjoy it. I don't know whether they want some deep philosophical question answer there, but because I enjoy it, that's why I knit. How often do you knit? Every single day. I guess if I was really ill and in bed, I wouldn't knit. I was going to say, I can't remember the last time I had the sickness bug. I do remember the last time I had the sickness bug and the one before that. We're not going to go into that. But yeah, if I was ill in bed and I couldn't sit up or I couldn't get out of bed, like when you have a sickness bug or you just feel so ill that you feel, then obviously I wouldn't knit. I did knit in hospital after having my gallbladder removed. That's the most recent operation I had. I've had quite a few. But that's the most recent one I had. And when I came around in the recovery room afterwards, and I was told that I could get my bag, which was underneath the bed, I got my knitting out and started knitting. And when the nurses saw that, they said, "I think you can get dressed and we'll give you some tea and toast. And if you can keep that down, then you can go home." I don't like tea, so I didn't drink the tea, but I ate a toast. Where do you like to knit? Everywhere. I have knitted, well, obviously I knit at home every day watching telly. I knit when I'm traveling, on planes, on trains, on buses, in cars. I have knitted on the cruise ship, I've knitted in church, I've knitted in a hospital bed, I've knitted visiting in hospital, I've knitted in waiting rooms, I've knitted at all kinds of events, so I like to knit everywhere. How would you describe your skill level? Advanced. How would a friend or family member describe your skill level? Well, if they know me fairly well, I would imagine advanced or expert or obsessed. Which of the following skills do you have? And out of 5, how skilled are you? 5 being the most skilled and 0 being the least skilled. Following a pattern, understanding instructions, abbreviations, 5. I don't like following other people's patterns. I mean, I can do it if I have to, but I don't like following other people's patterns. That's why I design my own. Knitting from a chart and knitting in the round, yes, I am expert at both of those. What experience do you have designing your own knitting projects or patterns? Well, 20 years worth. What type of items do you like to knit? Well, that's changed a lot over the years. So when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I knit, well, as a teenager, I guess I knitted fairly simple stuff that didn't involve a pattern. I do remember a couple of things I knitted that involved me just casting on and guessing on the right width and making a very simple boxy garment. It was the 80s, so that was in, so that was fine. And then in my late teens and 20s, early 20s, I knitted a couple of colorwork, few colorwork garments. I can't remember how many. And I enjoyed doing that. I wish I kept this one. This one I knitted for myself, and I have a picture of me wearing it, carrying my daughter when she was a baby. And I do wish I'd kept that sweater. It wouldn't fit me now, but I wish I kept it because it's really pretty. Then when I started designing, I got really into lace knitting, and I did loads of for years. Most of what I did was lace knitting, apart from magazines. So when I started designing for magazines, I felt like I had to do garments because otherwise I wouldn't be taken seriously as a designer. I don't think that's true. I think you can be a respected designer and just design initials. I think the more different things you can design and knit, if you're doing it as a job, the easier it is to get work. Now I really like making garments myself. The last 2 or 3 years, I've knitted more garments for myself than I ever have before. So, because I realized that even though I design and knit every day, I didn't actually have any garments for myself to wear, and I decided to rectify that. So now I have loads, and I wear them a lot. I also like accessories, quick things. Don't like chunky yarn. What's the most ambitious project you have knitted? One of my early designs, lace designs, was a stole called Midnight Stole. It's a rectangular shawl with a knitted on edging, knitted in really fine cobweb yarn that has 1200 meters per 100 gram. So I know that's probably the thick end of cobweb, but to me it's cobweb. And I had bought the yarn, dyed it myself, and I loved it. It's beaded, it's got a really complicated stitch pattern. I've never knitted it again because I'm too intimidated to, that's the truth. I really should try and knit it again sometime, but I love it. When I designed it, it was the most challenging thing I'd ever designed, and it probably is the most challenging thing I've designed ever, I think. And if I have a picture of it, I'll pop it on the screen. I really, really love it. If you've knitted my Midnight Stole, tell me. I really should knit another one. I think I had a sample knitter at some point, knit up another version of me in a different yarn, but I don't think I got that either. I think I accidentally at some point, because it was really fine, delicate yarn, I think I accidentally ripped it. I don't know what's happened to my original version, but I don't have it anymore. And I'm a bit sad. I think maybe it got damaged somehow. And I'm sad I haven't got it because it was also my own hand-dyed yarn and it was absolutely stunning. And I am very sad I don't have it. So let's move on to something else. Who do you knit for? Well, magazines, my workshops, patterns that I'm launching, and for myself. I don't always knit for anyone else other than myself. Like, I'll knit my husband's socks and occasional hats. I started the cardigan for him. It's either 15 years ago or 17 years ago. And let's go with 15. No, I haven't finished it. I know where it is. I should get it out and try and finish it before we move out of this house, hopefully towards the end of this year or early next year. But it's boring, so I can't be bothered. But I really probably should try and finish it. But it'll fit him. That's another question. But I should try and finish it, shouldn't I? Maybe I'll try and finish it before the 20-year anniversary of when I cast it on. Do you always need attention swatch? Yes, because if I'm designing for magazines, I need to know my attention to be able to work out the size of the garment. If I'm doing accessories, then no. So if I'm doing a shawl from the top down, I know roughly what kind of needle size I like with certain thicknesses of yarn, and I will just cast on. And then if I don't like the tension as I'm knitting it, I might rip it out and change needle size. If I'm doing a garment, yes, I always check my tension because I always design myself. You have to know where your tension is to work out the numbers. I need to know how many stitches and rows I have per centimeter. Otherwise, I can't work out how many stitches I need to fit my body. So I have no choice really to knit a tension swatch. Are you confident in correcting errors? Yes. As a very experienced knitter, designer, and teacher, I ought to be confident in correcting errors. When I start teaching a new workshop, like for example, when I started teaching brioche, the thing I was most nervous about was being able to fix mistakes, because obviously fixing mistakes is an open-ended thing. Mistakes can be anything, and I can practice fixing certain mistakes, but I don't know what mistakes I'm just going to make in a class. So I do make sure that anything I teach, I can fix mistakes. Have you had any brilliant knitting disasters? I looked at these questions earlier and I thought, yes, I probably have. Can I think of any at the moment? No, I can't think of any at the moment. I'm sure I have. I do have one that I knitted for a magazine, and I was knitting in a holiday. We were going to Scotland, so a lot of it was done in the car, and it was knitted all in one piece. And when I got home and blocked it, I noticed that on the front, in the middle of the front, I think I skipped like half a pattern repeat. It was an all over pattern, cables or lace or whatever. Can't remember. And I think I basically skipped half a repeat. And because it was on the front and in the middle, it was very, very obvious. I pretended I hadn't seen it and sent it off to the magazine and didn't say anything. And I don't think I ever got a copy of the magazine it was published in. So I have no idea what the pictures look like. I'm assuming they just modeled it with like the arm across the chest or across the waist. I think it was like waist height. So I assume they just modeled it with the arm across the waist so you couldn't see it. I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing a picture of it. Or maybe it got scrapped. I don't know, but I got paid for it. So I don't care. Another one, it was for the same magazine actually. I did a cardigan and I put the buttons on, and then it was quite a complicated stitch pattern. And as usual, I was quite close to the deadline to finish it. And then after I put the buttons on, I wasn't happy about one of the placements. I thought I'd cut the yarn for the button, and I cut the yarn for the button band, and I didn't have time to re-knit it. So I just tried to sew it together and cobble it together. And I thought, it's just got to survive the photo shoot. And it did. And nobody said anything. Is there anything else you like to do while you're knitting? Yes. Watch telly, listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks. Although I don't listen to audiobooks very often anymore. Have occasionally tried to read while knitting. It depends on where I'm sitting. If I'm sitting at the table, I can do that. If I'm sitting in the chair in the lounge, I can't, because there's nowhere to prop my Kindle up. I can't read stuff on my lap anyway because of my neck problems. I just end up in too much pain. But yeah, I mainly like to watch telly when I'm knitting, chat to people, knitting coffee shops, people watch. Just make the time go a bit faster, really. Do you have any personal reasons why knitting is important to you? Well, yeah, I enjoy doing it. And it's my job. It did. Okay, so what I probably should put in answer to that question, and I do think I have a video on this. So if I remember, I'll link it at the end or below. When I was in my 30s, I was off work for quite a while with long-term health problems in my late 20s and 30s. I think I was 29, 30, I think, when the accident happened. And I was off work for several years with chronic, quite severe neck and back pain. And I became very, very depressed. My oldest daughter was at school. My youngest daughter was starting nursery, I think, so I was away for half a day. So I was alone on my own a lot. A lot of my friends had gone back to work, so they weren't around as much. So I was very, very bored, very depressed, couldn't do very much in terms of like housework and stuff because it made the pain too much. And I did get very depressed. I did go on antidepressants for a while, but they didn't really work for me. They made me more depressed. And I got back into knitting, and that made me feel a lot better almost instantly because I dropped the girls off at school in the morning because Emily went to nursery at the same school that Vanessa went to. And then I'd go and pick Emily up at lunchtime till she started school. And then I come home after I drop them off in the morning and I just put daytime telly on. And let's face it, daytime telly day in, day out gets really boring. It was the early noughties, 2000s, so we didn't have streaming services or YouTube or any of that. So what was on telly? What was on telly? That was your choice. So I watched a lot of telly and I got very depressed and bored, and I could come home, drop the girls to school, come home, pick my knitting up, and at least knit while I was watching telly. And when I went to pick them up, I'd have something to show for it. I could see, right, this is what I've done today. I've knitted this much. And then that gradually developed into me trying to sell my knitting and then design. And then here we are today, 20 odd years later. Have you ever knitted as part of a team on a shared project? No, not really. Is there anything else you like to do whilst you're knitting? They've already asked me that question, haven't they? Watch telly, eat, chat, talk on the phone. Do you belong to any knitting groups? I am officially a member of our local knitting group, except I haven't been for 2 years. And then before that, I hadn't been since before COVID, so I'm not a very active member. So no, not really. Because our local knitting group meets during the day and I work. And so taking time out during the day is more difficult now than it used to be. Do you or have you ever worked in the knitting industry in a professional capacity? Yes. When you're not knitting, what else do you love to do? Scroll on my phone, go to the gym, go to spin classes, walk the dog. What do you consider to be your greatest achievement, or what is the most adventurous thing you have ever done? Probably going to the US for a year as an 18-year-old as an exchange student. I was very shy. I'm still very shy. I'm very introvert. As a teenager and as a child, I was very shy. I did go to England on a language holiday when I was 16. It was a very popular thing to do in the 80s if you lived in Norway, to go to England on a 3-week language holiday. There were several organizations offering these holidays. I really wanted to go to the States for a year as an exchange student, but my parents wouldn't let me. But they let me go to Bournemouth for 3 weeks on a language holiday. But none of my friends wanted to go, and I really wanted to go. So I went on my own. I got paired up with another Norwegian girl who was going on her own. So we stayed in the same host family, stayed with the same host family, and hung out quite a lot. And we also hung out with everybody else as a big group, really, most of the time. Absolutely loved it. It was my second trip to Bournemouth. Loved it. And then I kept nagging my parents about going to the States as an exchange student, and eventually they said yes. So I left Norway the day before I turned 18. It was the last year I could go. If my birthday had been a couple of months earlier, it would have been too late. I think the cutoff date was for birthdays before end of July. My birthday is in August. So I applied. I got rejected from the first organization I applied to. You do a written application, you do an interview. I applied 2 different organizations at the same time, and one I got an interview for first. I got rejected. I was devastated because I'd wanted this for so long and I never thought I would get rejected. And then I went for an interview for the second one, and luckily I got through. And I headed off for the States the day before I turned 18. I had traveled a lot because my family always went abroad on holiday a lot. So I traveled a lot in Europe, and I'd been to Morocco on a day trip from Spain. But I'd never been outside Europe really. And I'd never really traveled on my own. We traveled to New York, spent a night in New York, and then I traveled the next day to Colorado Springs in Colorado, where I spent nearly a year with an American family. I was lucky because I got to meet them before I went to the States, because they, by coincidence, were on a Scandinavian cruise a few weeks before I left for the States, and they came to Oslo. They had like half a day in Oslo. So my mum and I went and picked them up from the cruise ship and took them around some of the sites of Oslo and had lunch with them, and then took them back to the cruise ship. So I had the chance to meet them, and I'm really glad I did. But when I arrived in Colorado Springs, now bearing in mind, you are picking up an 18-year-old from a plane. She's coming for the first time ever on her own to the US for a year without her family. You would think you would be on time, wouldn't you? Yes, you would. So I got off the plane, and I don't know what it's like in US airports now, but it's a domestic airport in Colorado Springs, or at least it was back then. Got off the plane. People who were collecting people from planes could come to the gates. So area around the gate was full of people meeting people. The other exchange students who were in my area, who were on my flight, were all met by their families and went off. Everyone had gone. I was the only one standing there. No sign of my host family. And obviously, because I'd met them, I met the parents. I hadn't met their children, but I'd met the parents. I knew what they looked like. So I thought, right, now what do I do? And it was 1987, so obviously no mobile phones. I had their home number, obviously, but an address. So I thought, right, now what do I do? So I thought, well, I'll go and get my luggage and then I'll work out what to do. I also had a name of a local representative who worked for the organization I was traveling with, who was supposed to look after us there. She probably should have been at the airport to make sure we all got collected, but she was rubbish at her job, which I later discovered. So I went down. As I was going down the escalator, I saw the mother and daughter running up the escalators on the other side of the terminal, and I happened to see them, so I shouted out and ran after them. If I hadn't met them a few weeks before, I wouldn't have known what she looked like, and I probably would have missed them. But yeah, I think that was a really brave thing. And then I started high school in Colorado Springs. I went to Mitchell High School, and that was the first time I'd started a new school where I didn't know anyone since I started school as a 7-year-old. Because when I started school at 7, right through to the end of secondary school when I was 16, I went to 2 different schools, but everyone moved from primary school to the secondary school. So it was all of us moved as a class. When I started a college of further education for like equivalent of A-levels, by the third quarter, now maybe a quarter of the class was from my old school, so I already knew several people there. So the first time I started a school where I didn't know anyone, I was also having to speak a foreign language. Now my English was very good. I've been learning English since I was 9. My English was good, but it's not the same as being fluent and speaking it all the time. And yeah, it was a bit of a culture shock. It was a big thing. I loved it. I would absolutely recommend anyone do it. I wouldn't go to the States at the moment. I wouldn't want to send my 18-year-old to the States at the moment with the current political situation. Not going to elaborate on that, but I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. So that's probably the my greatest achievement was to move to the States for a year when I was 18. And then when I came back to Norway, I was back in Norway for a year and a half nearly. Came back in like end of July, I think, in 1988. And then I moved here to the UK in January 1990. That was different because I moved here to work with horses. The couple who ran the stables that I was working at, I knew them. They taught me to ride in Norway. They ran my local stables in Norway. They were both British, but they ran the local stables where I learned to ride in Norway. So I knew them already. So that was very different. I didn't know anyone else at the stables, but I knew them. So that was quite different. But let me know what you think about Game of Wool coming back. What changes do you think they should make to make it more successful this time and to make knitters like it? Clearly, the fact that a lot of knitters didn't like it and criticized it is something they don't really care that much about. I'm assuming as they're coming back, they got good viewing figures. Be interested to see what day of week they come back, because I think the Sunday evening 8 o'clock slot is quite a popular time slot. So I'm interested to see if they come back in that time slot. Will it be late autumn? Because I think they're filming it later this year than they were last year, or will it be after Christmas? I don't know. Don't know how long the production time takes from like filming to it being on air. So let me know what you think. Are you looking forward to it coming back? Are you going to be watching it? Will you give it a second chance? Or are you like, no, last time was enough, I'm not going to do that again? I will watch it and I will probably talk about it on here. I do have views about what changes I think they need to make, but I'm not going to share them now. I'll wait till it comes out and then let you know what my thoughts are. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Just a bit of fun. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.